Hi there everyone, welcome to part 5 of this tutorial series. Today we're going to look at the multiple biomes that your map may have, and then how we can texture your realistic terrain to cover all of these differences. So using this example here of the Sword Coast, we can see that we've got kind of the grassy areas, we've got some deserts, we've got some ice and glaciers, and perhaps some kind of like marshy lands and things like that. So I'm going to take us through the process of creating the masks in Photoshop first. I'll do that pretty quickly because it's very much the sort of similar workflow to what we've done in the past. And then go over into Gaea and then add all of these together. Before I start with this part of the tutorial, I just wanted to start with a really heartfelt thanks to everyone who's subscribed and commented and liked my videos so far. This is a very new channel and it's a very, very long way from being monetized. So really, your kind words and just sharing this passion for making these nice worlds is pretty much what's keeping me going. So please do keep it up. I love reading every single one of them. If you do produce some nice art using your homebrew world, I'd love to see it. So I'm going to link my Reddit page in the description. You can either, feel free to just message me directly on Reddit, or if you post your art somewhere and want to tag and share this tutorial series to kind of say this is how you made this, then that would really be great for me. I'd love to see the work myself, and then also share this tutorial series with other people who may not have come across it so far. Essentially, what we want to do here in Photoshop is create a series of masks that we can use to control which biome is displayed where on our 3D map. We can do this by creating, I guess, fairly hard edges. So for this example, if I just show, add on a layer here, we can see here that I've kind of just traced around the edge of the sort of desert area here. Or if we don't need to be quite as precise, we can just, paint areas with a large brush and then use tools within Gaea later on to kind of warp that and give it a slightly less of a hand-painted look. And we will be modifying the masks that we create to kind of blend seamlessly between the two biomes and not have just a hard edge. Trying to do it in something that will look quite natural. So I've already created the mask for the desert area, but I'll just go through very quickly, and I'll probably speed this up, and I'll add one for the ice. So again, we're just going to create a new solid color layer. We'll make sure to set the mask so it's all black so we can see what we're doing. And then we're going to once again take the magnetic lasso tool here and just trace our way around the ice. And again, be as accurate as you want to be, because we're going to be doing a bit of sort of procedural color blending later. So I'll just fill this white, and you can see here the magnetic lasso tool really sort of struggles with these edges. So to fix this, I'm just going to go over to the paintbrush, which is set to white already. And I'm just going to deselect this and then just paint over the edges to make sure this is all filled in. And I'll just skip ahead, kind of tracing the rest of this. It will be a bit boring to watch. Okay, and once again, once you've traced all of the areas that you want to be included in a given biome, I've been just doing this showing this in black, just because I've got a white layer already prepared. And then we're going to export this as a PNG and just give it a name that you can use later, like ice. Now just rinse and repeat for all of the other biomes you want to include in your final textured output. Okay, given that it's a Saturday that I'm recording this and I'm not going to be trying to record and edit in the evening after I finished work, I think I'm going to continue on finishing up with my tree mask, and I'll create another mask for the marshes, and this kind of plane of standing stones looks like a different color as well. I'll just see if I can try and capture as much of this gorgeous map from, I believe, Mike Schley, which is available on D&D Beyond. Get as much of this as possible. I guess we've got some green fields and different plains as well. Perhaps we can have a different biome for that. I guess I'll take us through probably a more complicated example where we've got quite a few biomes in one, and if we can have a difficult example in the tutorial, then perhaps that will make you well prepared for whatever world you need to build. So I'm going to stick on the Baldur's Gate soundtrack, I think, and carry on in a couple of hours after I've traced all of this. Hopefully less time. Okay, that really wasn't that bad for this map. I think that took me another 25 minutes or so to kind of get all the different biomes. So we've got the one for the ice. We already had the one for the desert. It's kind of standing stones, some marshes, and the plains. So for each of these, I've just added in the white background and exported them as a different PNG file. So back to Gaea now. I'm going to obviously carry on with the file that we used in the last tutorial. This node graph is already looking like a bit of a beast, and even with the simple texturing tutorial, this was super messy by the end of it. So we're going to utilize Gaea's tabs that we can use to kind of help organize our workflow. In order to be able to kind of pass on information from these nodes into the next tab, we've got to use something called portals. So in order to create a portal, you have to just right click on a given node, go to Manage Portals, and then there will be the options of which of the inputs and outputs we want to convert to a portal for the outputs. So I've already selected the out and the snow because this snow layer or node output is our kind of sort of most advanced 3D information. And this is what we're going to use for the kind of very final texture once everything's put together. But we do also want to take some other things through with us. We want to take the output of the C node, because this is going to give us the 3D of our terrain minus the trees and the snow. So this is kind of like if we're texturing the ground beneath these things. We also want to take through our water mask, which is this file node just here. So manage portals, convert to portal out. And just to make it a bit easier to find later on, we'll rename this to water mask. We can always come back to this node to find kind of more inputs as we need them later on. I've done a bit of practicing. I'm going to see if we can try and do this live, and I'll just pause and edit the video if I'm having to play around with settings a bit too much. So I'll leave that there just in case I need it for reference, but let's start from a new tab for texturing this. We want to start off, as I said, with the C output. I've not found a way to just generate a new tab straight away. So in order to do this, I'm actually going to drag out, create a choke point. This is just to help with routing your node around. And I'm going to click on this symbol here, and then do move to tab, and then I'll create a new tab. And I'm going to rename this tab land texture. Okay, so the first step. So I think what I will try to do is perhaps use a different tab for each biome. And that way I can kind of show you the workflow for one. And then it will be kind of a step that you just have to repeat for each additional biome that you add. So we start off as before in the previous tutorial with a texture base. Let this load. And the important thing to think about is the order in which we add the color. Because we're going to be combining different biomes, we kind of want to think, what sorts of things do we want to keep the same regardless of the biome. So in this case, I think what I'm going to do is say that the kind of the rocky mountains will assume they are all going to be made of the same rock material. And therefore we will add those in later. So we'll start off with just the ground for now. So I'm going to drag a sap map out from the texture base. And this is going to be our kind of standard green grass. So I'll just, to help find this later, we'll just call this grass_C for grass color. And then we'll select a green that works nicely. Okay, here's something that I like for our kind of standard grass. We're going to have kind of our grassy plains, and we'll have different greens for the trees as well. So yeah, I think 116, we'll go with that. The first kind of biome I'm going to combine with this is the sort of desert area that we had over here. So I'm just going to drag another sap map out. And I'll rename this to desert _C for the desert color. And if we remember from the kind of original map, let's just take this off, we can see that there was, I guess this was kind of more of a yellowy sand, and then there was like a paler color in the center. So let's try and replicate that in Gaea. I'll just go through and select one that looks nice. Okay, here's something that looks nice. There's a bit of variation and quite a bit of interest to this one. So what we need to do now is combine these two. And so I'll just drag out from the grass into the desert and set this to blend. Right now we're just seeing the desert everywhere, and that's because we need to tell Gaea where to put the desert and where to put the grass. So to do that, we will add in a file node, and then we're going to load up our desert.png. We can plug this straight in. We see it's the wrong way around, so I'll invert the mask. And you can see this is, kind of doing what we want, but it's really, it's creating this unnatural hard edge between the two. So there's a couple of things we can do here. We can take a look at adding in just a standard blur node. And by default, it's way too high. We just want to kind of a bit of a slope to it, and then add that in place of the mask. And you can see this is kind of like smoothing it out, blending it out. If we want to do something that's perhaps a little bit more kind of influenced by the terrain itself, one thing I found just by messing around really is we can change this blur node. Click here, you can change this to variable blur, and this will take a second input. So this means that we can decide how much blur is applied where. So one thing I quite like to do is to add a flow map. And you can see here that we've got kind of differing amounts of, we can create different amounts of blur based on how much flow is happening over the terrain. So if I plug this into input 2, we can see now that this is starting to kind of create some effects around the edges of the mask that we're using. So I might actually turn this a little bit up, something a bit more dramatic, and maybe let's go a bit further. Okay, and when we go back to the combine node now, we can see that you can kind of see that blurring is now taking into account the sort of flow lines that are on the surface. Perhaps this is not necessary. Just go with whichever version that you like. Alrighty. Next, we will add in that kind of paler colored sand that corresponded to the standing stones. So I'm going to add in another sat map. Let's just tab sat map. This time I'm going to make use of the portals just so we don't have so many crisscrossing connections. So I'm just going to turn the texture base, because we're going to use that a lot, into a portal. Convert to portal out. And then on this sat map, manage portals, connect to portal in, and then texture base. And this time we are going to, as I say, we're going to select a kind of paler sandy color. Let's go back here. Yeah, okay. So that looks like a paler sandy color. And really we're just going to repeat the process again. So I'm going to just drag to the output of the last one. Set it to blend 100%. And then we're going to add in the file primitive, GB, what did I call it? Standing stones. For this one, I think we'll just do a normal blur. And I'm going to guess that we need to invert this as well. Plug this in. Ah, I was wrong. We do not need to invert it. Let's take that back then. Okay, oh, that does look quite harsh, doesn't it? Let's see, do we need to increase the radius a bit? Okay. Maybe the color's a bit too much. Maybe let's pick something else. Actually, so by going to this node and doing lock preview, we can now change what we're looking at here. Just pick, maybe that one's a bit better. It's a different color, but it's not such a harsh difference. And actually, I think now's a good time to mention that, you know, we are going to kind of give these a bit more blending into each other with a color erosion node. But I think it's important to pick the right time to do this. We should do the planes next. So yeah, let's add the planes. So I'll add another sat map, and let's unlock this with F. And we want just a different type of green to everything else. So perhaps this kind of lighter color green. And we need to, of course, add the input. So manage portal in texture base. Okay. That's going to provide something a bit distinct. Again, go to the output, blend, all the way up to 1. And then we'll add another file primitive. This time we want the planes. Let's go to a blur. Let's turn that down. Yeah, I think it's the same issue again. I think what we probably want to do here is add in the variable blur instead. So let's change this to variable blur. And we're probably going to use this flow node quite a lot. So let me manage ball tools, convert to ball tool out, manage ball tools, input to, then flow. I'm going to turn this radius up a bit. And now let's look at the final result. Okay, this is looking a little bit more natural now. It's making me think that we should probably do this with the standing stones as well. So let's do that. So variable blur, manage portals, input to, and flow. Increase this a bit. And there we go. Might lose a little bit of the accuracy of how we originally traced it, but I think it's just a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And let's just zoom out. Yeah, okay. I think this is okay. I think, yeah, probably you'd want to spend some time kind of adjusting the sort of value, how much blur we're having. Perhaps this needs a bit more still. Yeah, okay, that's looking nicer. The final two land textures we're going to add are the marshes and then the ice. So let's do the marshes first. So again, right click, sat map. Let's connect manage portals in texture base. And these kind of marshes, I'm going to go for green, but I'm going to go for a kind of, let's see what we can find. I guess I want something a bit muddier looking. Okay, after quite a bit of searching around, I found this one, 253 in the green section. It's not quite what I'm looking for, but I guess I quite liked the, you know, with all these lines, you get quite a bit of variation in the colors. I played around with the bias a little as well, just to get kind of what I was looking for. So not quite swampy marshes, but I think this will give us the effect that that we need. So once again, it's going to be adding in a file primitive. Let's load up our marshes. And then I think once again, we'll go for a variable blur where we add a portal, input to flow. Just wait for this to load. And then we'll connect this to here, into here, and then blend all the way up to 1. But yeah, here we've got the high more, kind of with a bit of a different look to it. We're going to do one more step now. I guess now that we've got all of the different, I guess, kind of earth colors sorted, we're going to do a color erosion step. So to do this, we want to do color erosion. And then right click, manage portals. And then for the height, we use the C portal. And this is just going to simulate based on the elevation, just kind of mixing the colors a little bit. So I'll probably play around with the settings just a little bit. We can increase the color hold and the flow volume and the transport distance to just kind of get these colors sort of blended into each other a bit more. Like I said, this is a an iterative process. You know, work at this until you get something that you're happy with. But this, I think, looks quite cool. Okay, I got a little ahead of myself there with the color erosion node. We do want that, but not just yet, because we want to add in the mountains now. So I'm going to add another sat map for our mountain color. Right click, manage portals in texture base. So now we just want to pick a rocky color that looks good with our mountains. So maybe something a bit darker. Yeah. Play around, find what works for you, what looks good in your map. But yeah, I think I'll just stick with these ones for now. I might go back and pick better color palettes for each of these biomes for the final result, but we'll just use this to get to the end. So we're going to combine this with our previous step. And this time, obviously, we've not got a mask to use here. We are instead going to use a slope node. And for the input, again, manage portals in and C. And then drag this to the mask. Let's see if we get this the right way around. Oh, and set it to 1. Yeah, we got it the right way around this time. We can play around with this slope. Maybe we want the maybe increase the fall off a little bit to just kind of allow for the kind of the grassy colors to grow up the mountains a little bit. Yeah, that looks nice. And then, of course, we'll now plug this into the color erosion to just kind of, you know, simulate perhaps the rocks falling down from the mountains into the kind of the grassy areas as well. Okay, so now we've got our land textured. I think I'm going to pause here and just kind of go back and double check, see if there's any sat maps that I want to change. Okay, I've gone through and made some adjustments now. Don't worry about this ugly rectangle, I'll explain this in a second. I've also just, to save a bit of time, added the ice mask as well. I wanted to do this after the color erosion because I didn't really want the ice to be sort of flowing out too much into the desert. But you can kind of see here now, really, however many biomes you want to add, it's really about just kind of replicating this process and chaining it all together. So the changes I made then, I changed the grass to 231. I just thought for the mainland, I just wanted a bit of a warmer color. I changed the desert to 77. The original one I'd chosen was quite yellow, and I thought, you know what, let's just tone that down a little bit, and that will help with the contrast for the sort of standing stones area. For the standing stones, I changed to 320, and I increased the variable blur to 0.3 radius. This is really just to help kind of spread this out and mix it in a little bit more. For the planes, I switched to 36. And again, just increased the blur radius up to 0.57, really mixing this in just to kind of give, I wanted to like keep it fairly subtle, but you can kind of see if you know what you're looking for, the kind of slightly deeper greens that we're seeing here for the plains. I kept this one for the marshes as they were. I guess this is kind of like marshes / moorlands. So I guess this is the high moor here. And I noticed in the when I was looking at the original map, these islands kind of also had that same sort of coloring on the cartoon map. So I'm kind of taking this as like kind of more rugged land, and just to kind of make my life a little bit easier. In Photoshop, I just literally drew a rectangle over here, and that creates this rectangle here, but it doesn't matter because we're going to cover this up with the water texture in a second anyway. And yeah, so we have the color erosion, and then, as I said, after the color erosion, I've added the ice with a small amount of blur just to kind of help break up the edge in a way that kind of follows the flows of the raised ground. So that's us done with the land. So now let's move on to the water. And I think the water deserves its own tab. So I'll just drag out from here, add a choke point, and then I will, with the choke point selected, click the graph, and then move to tab, new graph. Let's just rename this water texture. And yeah, let's start with the sea. So I think last time we used the kind of original file. We've got it here, kind of. No, wrong file. The original file kind of blurred just to give that that idea of shallower waters around the islands and the coast. So I'm going to just I'm going to rename this blur land. I'm going to make this a portal as well. And then in the water texture, I think I'm actually going to want to blur this a little bit more. So right click, blur, and manage portals in blur land. Let's turn this down because that's a bit too much. But yeah, something like this. And then I will add in a ridge node. Okay, just to help get this video to the end and not going over an hour, hopefully, I've decided I just worked ahead and planned out the rest of the node graph, but we'll still go through each node one by one. So I made an update to the ridge node. I just kind of scaled down to 0.52 and increased the height all the way. I also increased the radius of the blur. And then when we combine these two, I've just got it set now to a blend of 0.55. So the kind of the land mass is having quite a subtle effect, but this will help when we add the sat map. I've chosen 41 in the blue section. And this kind of just helps have like kind of more of a transition of color away from the island. So we've got our choke point here, which is just taking the output color from the previous tab, and we're combining and using the mask that we made in Photoshop, the water mask. I've added an adjust node to just basically turn all these options on. So we just want it inverted and then used as a hard mask. When you set this to a blend and a ratio of 1, we can now see here that we've got the kind of lighter areas closer to the islands and just a bit more interesting kind of color variation in the water. In this case, I've just used one mask to do all of the water. So this is including the rivers and the lakes. But you could kind of repeat the sort of process we did with the land and do several steps if you want, separate colors for your rivers and then separate colors for your lakes as well. One thing to note, by using the kind of original mask from Photoshop rather than, say, like the C output from the C node, it does mean that where things have eroded away, the color kind of, is matching where the land used to be. I think this can actually create an okay effect. It sort of replicates the sort of beaches around the land masses. But if you really want it to not have that kind of effect, then you're better off using the C node output to kind of define where the sea is, and then manually using a separate mask for your rivers and lakes later. Hopefully, so far in this tutorial, you've learned enough to be able to do that yourself. So to go out from here, again, dragging out, create a choke point, and then with that selected, we go move to new tab, then new graph. And now we just need to add in the trees and the snow. So here's that same choke point here. And in order to get the texture of the trees, we need to feed in that 3D information. So I've just added another texture base node, and I've added a portal to the output of the snow node, because the snow node does include the trees as well. Picked quite a vibrant sat map. And again, it's a case of combining that with the previous choke point. We know the drill now. Add the tree mask. Here I've used an adjust node, used the tree mask, which was created here in the 3D step, just after the blur. And then I've just inverted that. So when we combine these two, we can now see the kind of the colors of the trees. The final step is to just now add the snow. So we don't actually need to do too much for this. The snow itself is an output of the snow node. So all we need to do now is drag out, create another combine. And this time we're going to set it to add and to up to 1. And in the second port, just select snow lined snow. And so that's just going to have a texture where it's completely black for most of the places, but just with white where the snow is. And now you can kind of see here, if we look at the high ice, we've got the kind of the icy blue color coming through. And then also white where it's like completely covered in snow. Okay, so there we have a multiple biome map of the Sword Coast. I'll probably load this up into Blender and throw in some fancy renders just to kind of show this off. Remember that we want to export that water mask as well to kind of make sure we can make the water nice and reflective. But yeah, I think this is pretty much it for the series. I think I'll make one more video on how to make a 3D printable STL file in Blender. But after that, I'll need some suggestions on anything else that you guys would like more information on. After a while, I'm going to have to do some kind of YouTube tutorial searches myself, but I'm really keen to try out the Unreal Engine exporter. And I know there's some cool stuff where you can kind of use these maps to have trees procedurally placed in the world. I think that would be pretty cool. That would be a good way to celebrate having a larger number of subscribers, at least. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video and possibly the last in the series. Thanks very much.